There's parity atop the ACC, but is that good or bad for the Cardinals?
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Card Nation, what's going on, everyone? Welcome in to this Monday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Pence. This is my sixth year covering U of L, fourth year hosting this show. And I want to take the time to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, Locked On Louisville free and available on all streaming services 5 days a week. Your team every day. Be sure to leave a comment in the YouTube section below, because as you all know, that is a great way to help the show continue to grow. It is much appreciated. Game week for Louisville once again, coming off of the bye this past weekend. The Cardinals will host Bowling Green this upcoming Saturday. For the show today, we're going to kind of review this past weekend for the conference because it's kind of being confirmed. There's a ton of parity atop the ACC. Is that good or bad? I honestly think it might be a little bit more bad than good for the Louisville Cardinals. I'll explain why coming up here in just a moment. We'll discuss the updated pathway to the ACC championship game and potential college football playoff appearance. And then we will also discuss the successful weekend for Dan Meske and the Louisville volleyball team. But first, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. All you have to do to get started is download the app today. I don't know about you all, but man, that early bye week just sucks because you get back into football mode and then boom, you get hit with a bye week. But it seems like there were some things that Louisville needed to work out. So perhaps a blessing in disguise, but I was able to just kind of sit back and observe what was going on in the ACC. And for the second straight weekend, it was not a good slate of games for the Atlantic Coast Conference. It's going to continue to hurt the conference's perception. But I was reminded that there's a ton of parity atop the ACC. And kind of went back and forth whether that was good, whether that was bad for the Louisville Cardinals. I kind of came away thinking that it was more bad because, yes, it's good in the sense that Clemson isn't that lock that maybe I thought they were to make the ACC championship game. However, maybe Miami takes their place now, and it makes it a little bit more opportunistic for other teams to take Clemson's place. So it's good and beneficial because maybe there aren't teams that are locks to make the ACC championship game, but it's bad because you're opening the door for more teams. And it starts with Clemson. I mean, the Tigers have been by far the most disappointing team in conference play. They started out 1-2. They lost LSU to start the season. They barely beat Troy. And then they lose to Georgia Tech in a game where I know that they were missing players, probably could have won the game, but they didn't make the plays when they needed to. Credit to Brent Key and the Yellow Jackets for coming out of that home game with the W. But of course, I will be the first to admit, seems like I was wrong about Clemson. Maybe the season's not over yet, but they're 1-2. Things aren't looking great. They're not the buzzsaw or the machine that I predicted them to be. Cade Klubnik has not lived up to the expectations. He has not been even a fraction as good as what people thought he was going to be, myself included. I was wrong on that. And of course, I was a little bit lower on Miami, right? Because I didn't know if they were going to be able to sustain what we saw last year with a generational offense. Now, I think that their strengths are a little bit different this season, but man, that offensive line is incredible. They have an incredible offensive line. I mean, their skill position guys have been making plays. Carson Beck has looked the part through the first 3 games, and it seems like Miami kind of just one-for-one replacement with Clemson at the moment. So I think Miami's kind of right there at the top of the conference. And until I see otherwise, they are the best team in the ACC right now. So you have Florida State and Georgia Tech passing tests. Georgia Tech, of course, beat Colorado. It wasn't a pretty game, but they got it done. Same thing with the game against Clemson. I mean, you play to win the games, and 3-0 is 3-0. Georgia Tech has a pretty easy, compared to everyone else, pretty easy remainder of the ACC schedule going to be something that we, talk about more in the next segment. So you've got Florida State and Georgia Tech passing tests, or Florida State will have Miami coming up soon. That's something that we're definitely focusing on. But, I mean, they beat Alabama, and they dominated them at that. So you've just really got to give it up for the teams that are making the plays. Florida State, Georgia Tech. And then you have that group outside of it. Like right now, I feel like Louisville has 6 contenders for the ACC championship game. You've got Miami, you've got Florida State and Georgia Tech. Well, actually, I'll say 7 at the moment. Florida State and Georgia Tech. I'm going to keep Clemson in here just for the moment, but they are indeed on fraud watch. They're going to have to make things up. Like, I'm giving Dabo Swinney and the Clemson Tigers the benefit of the doubt, and they are going to be able to prove it. SMU, Florida State, Louisville, all coming up in the rest of the season. But, man, they are hanging on by a thread. Like, they are right there, and a loss is going to push them down significantly. But I'm going to keep Clemson right there just for the moment because there's a drop-off outside of the top 7 contenders. You've got Louisville, SMU, 2 teams that, SMU has lost a game, and they didn't particularly look great against Missouri State. They won 28-10, but it was kind of like that game against James Madison. JMU better team than Missouri State, but the way that fans, perceive that game is like, we won, but was it really all that pretty? No. So SMU, kind of with Louisville, I think they've got the talent to compete for an ACC championship game berth, but of course they have a lot to work on. So Miami, Clemson, Florida State, Georgia Tech, Louisville, SMU. Those are 6 teams that I feel like are right there in the hunt for the ACC championship game. But there's another team that has been taking care of business. They got to win this weekend over Minnesota. Look, I think that this team has to prove more to me. But California, at the moment, guys, Riverboat Ron Rivera and company, they beat Oregon State by almost 20 points. They handled business against Texas Southern, and then they beat Minnesota by 13 points. And look, I know Minnesota might not be the greatest, but it is a Power 4 victory. California going to get an opportunity to prove themselves throughout the ACC slate. But, they've got Louisville and SMU, but that's at the end of the season. Like, you don't have Clemson. You don't have Georgia Tech. You don't have Miami. And then there are some teams on the outside looking in. NC State, I know that they're 3-0 just like California. I know that they've got that victory over Wake Forest. They've beaten Virginia. So, they're handling business, right? Like, NC State is 2-0 in conference play. But, man, these wins just haven't really been the greatest. Like, just kind of based upon the eye test. Like, I just don't know if I believe in NC State yet. So I'm not sure if I'm going to put them in that contender spot just yet. And that end of the season is going to be a brutal stretch from Pittsburgh, Georgia Tech, Miami, Florida State stint. Like, they're going to get a chance to prove it. Virginia, the offense, I think, has the potential. They did lose to NC State, but they blew out William & Mary and Coastal Carolina. Tony Elliott's team is better than they were the past 2 seasons. They're on the outside looking in. And then I've got Pittsburgh. And Pittsburgh beat West Virginia on Saturday. They would be in that contender hunt. But, man, as much as I was hoping to see in Morgantown, I just didn't. Like, the Pittsburgh offense, gosh, just talking about wanting to see more. Eli Holstein, turnovers in the worst times. There was a turnover in the red zone early on in that game. They had opportunities to be able to close it out on defense, and they weren't able to do it. So right now, I think if I had to rank the top 5 teams in the conference, number 1 is Miami. Number 2, Florida State. Number 3, Georgia Tech. I think that the win over Alabama looks like a better win than Georgia Tech's over Clemson. And not to mention Florida State just handling business throughout. So I'm going to put Florida State at number 2 for the moment. Georgia Tech is number 3. After that, because SMU has that loss, didn't really look great against Missouri State, I feel okay putting Louisville at number 4 at the moment, and then SMU right behind them. Number 6 would then be Clemson. Number 7 would be California. Number 8 right there would be NC State. So a lot of parity. I brought up all that to suggest that the parity is right there at the top of the conference. Like, it is an all-out battle for an ACC championship game berth. Like, Louisville controls their own destiny. We see that. But however, I think that Clemson losing might be a little bit more discouraging to me than if they were to beat Georgia Tech. And we'll discuss that. We'll discuss what their pathway looks like for a conference championship game berth and a playoff berth when we come back on this Monday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. Quick question for all of you college football fans out there. If you could go back in time and sit front row at your school's biggest rivalry game, what hat would you be wearing? Yes, I said hat. For me, it would be the game. These aren't just hats. They're the same vintage styles that fans wore back in the 80s and 90s. And guess what? They still go for the same price they did back then. When you use the code Locked On, you will get your vintage hat for just $16.99. Head to thegamecaps.com and you can grab the Louisville Cardinals classic bar or retro circle design and use the code Locked On for an exclusive discount, because legends wear the game. Also, before we get into the next segment, let's talk about our friends over at 5 Hour Energy. Caffeine just got a flavor upgrade. 5 Hour Energy shots deliver tasty caffeine in 17 bold flavors, each 2-ounce shot packs the caffeine of a premium 12-ounce cup of coffee, plus B vitamins and nutrients with zero sugar and zero crashes. What I love the most is how portable they are. Big taste, tiny shot. You can take it anywhere and get that boost when you need it. Like, for me, I reach for that 5 Hour Energy shot because I'm traveling a good portion of the week in my sales job, and I don't really like to have that cup of coffee because it gets cold throughout the drive, and 5 Hour Energy just makes it so convenient with how portable it is, small in nature with it being a 2-ounce bottle. Enough with the boring, flavorless caffeine. It's time to give your caffeine a flavor upgrade with 5 Hour Energy shots. Get the favorites you love or be bold and try something new in store and online at www.5hourenergy.com or on Amazon today. Thanks again for making Locked On Louisville your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, Locked On Louisville free and available on all streaming services, including YouTube 5 days a week. Your team every day. Continuing on along in this ACC weekend recap edition, we will have everything you need to know about the upcoming matchup between Louisville and Bowling Green throughout the week. Sorry, gosh, I can't talk. But we're going to kind of talk about what we saw from the ACC because it directly benefits the Cardinals. Now, if you're one of those people that wants to say, well, the Cardinals didn't look good against James Madison, I just don't believe that they can make the ACC championship game or the playoffs, I think we shouldn't be talking about that. We should be talking about getting better. Okay, but you can do both. Like, yeah, this team has some things that they need to improve on, but look across the college football landscape. There are many teams, ranked teams especially, that have to improve. Like, nobody's got it perfect right now. I think that that's just a sign of the times with teams trying to build up that chemistry and camaraderie in the transfer portal era. So, yeah, I mean, this team needs to improve, but we beat James Madison by 14 points and looked absolutely abysmal on offense for the majority of the game. Like, this is a James Madison team that was in the top 40 of the AP poll. So forgive me for not throwing in the towel on the season 2 games in. But that Clemson lost to Georgia Tech. I saw some people on social media say, oh, well, Clemson can be out of the picture now. Like, Louisville controls their own destiny. Sure, but I honestly wanted a Clemson win over Georgia Tech because now Georgia Tech's pathway to the ACC championship game becomes that much more opportunistic. Like, Georgia Tech has the easiest conference schedule. They have Wake Forest, Virginia Tech, Duke, Syracuse, NC State, Boston College, and Pittsburgh. You know who they don't see? Miami, Louisville, SMU, the other top 3 teams that are right there. They don't see Florida State. So it's just kind of one of those things, and they don't see California either. All these top teams that are at the top of the conference, or people believe are at the top of the conference, they're not having to play. Like their toughest game on their conference schedule right now, maybe at NC State. And they struggled against Wake Forest and against Eastern Carolina. So, I mean, yeah, Clemson losing doesn't hurt the Cardinals. I think it's more so of the result the other way, the other side of the argument. Georgia Tech has an easier way. So you're going to have to prioritize winning every game that you need to win, or winning every game that you're supposed to win more so, and then probably winning 2 games against the Clemson, Miami, SMU group. Like, yes, maybe the Clemson game looks a little bit easier than it did preseason, but now it's like Georgia Tech has a huge opportunity. And then, I mean, you look at Florida State, they've got Miami, they've got Clemson, they don't play Louisville or SMU. So and of course, Miami has looked really, really good. Like they blew out South Florida, they beat Notre Dame. They've got Florida State, Louisville, SMU. I mean, Louisville's that one team that they will play Clemson, SMU, Miami. So as much as I think that parity can help, I think it also hurts the Cardinals because just by the sheer amount of teams that are competing, right? Like I need to see more from Florida State. Like that Miami Florida State game will tell me a lot of what I need to know. But if Miami wins that game, I mean, if Louisville loses to Miami per se, then I mean, hey, it's going to be challenging. So I think that I would be shocked or surprised, maybe not shocked. I would be surprised if 2 conference losses got you into the ACC championship game because of Clemson losing to Georgia Tech. Like, I don't think Georgia Tech loses 2 more games in the conference play. Now, I could be wrong. Haynes King, maybe a little bit of a durability issue. If he has to miss some time, Georgia Tech is going to be in for a tough stretch. Now, of course, Georgia Tech plays that style of football that maybe leads to close games. So are they going to continue to win those one-score games? Perhaps not. But now you got Florida State. Now you've got SMU still hanging around. That loss wasn't to a conference team. Louisville will have an opportunity to control their own destiny. That's all I'm saying, but I don't agree that Clemson loss helps Louisville out. I think it does the exact opposite at the moment because of Georgia Tech. Now, of course, there are some that say, well, let's stop thinking about the playoffs and think about getting better. Again, bro, it doesn't have to be one or the other. Like, it doesn't, 2 things are not mutually exclusive here. Like, they could be true at one time. Like, yes, you need to improve, but last time I checked, the Cardinals were 2-0 with an opportunity to continue to prove themselves. So I think there is more of an added effort with how bad the ACC is played. Like, the perception of the conference is just absolutely terrible right now, to the point to where 2 losses, if you don't make the ACC championship game, I have a very hard time believing that 10-2 is going to get you into the college football playoff as an at-large. It didn't last year for Miami. If you get to the ACC championship game with 2 losses and you lose, I don't think 10-3 with an ACC conference championship game loss is going to get you into the playoffs. I think that your 2 most likely, one automatically gets you in. You win the ACC championship game. Boom, you're there. The other one is pulling an SMU, going 11-1, and then losing the conference championship game. And I think 11-2 would probably get you in. So I think you have to make it. I think you have to make the ACC conference championship game to get to the playoff one way or the other. If you're sitting there at 10-2 on the outside looking in, you're going to have to hope for pandemonium in that 8-15 ranking. Hope there's no group of 5 team that's going to rise up in there. I don't think that there's going to be, but you have to eliminate everyone that you can. You have to make sure that the Big 12 only gets the conference champion in, and other teams just fall off. Like, you are going to have to hope for a lot. So for the Cardinals, the 2 most likely scenarios, I think you have to double down. Like I'm doubling down that the two most likely scenarios are either winning the ACC Conference Championship game or losing one regular season game and then losing that conference championship game. So we'll see. But we're going to continue to learn about the ACC as we go through the month of September. There have been some requests to talk about the start of the Louisville volleyball season, and we will discuss the pretty solid weekend of play for Dan Meske's team when we come back on this Monday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. But first, I want to take the time to tell you about our friends over at Prize Picks. This episode brought to you by Prize Picks, the daily fantasy app where making the right call can actually pay off. You and I make decisions every day. But on Prize Picks, being right means cashing in. With football back, Prize Picks is the simplest and fastest way to get in on the action. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player projections, and you can turn your takes into real prizes all in 60 seconds. For me, I've been playing Prize Picks lately, and it's such a fun way to stay locked in for the season. It's quick, easy, and honestly, my favorite way to follow along with football. The best part is even if one of your picks misses, Prize Picks invented the flex play, so you can still double your money. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's the code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. The Cardinals have opened up as a 26.5-point favorite over the Bowling Green Falcons, according to our title sponsor of the show, FanDuel. But also, the NFL season continues on through week 2 action tonight, doubleheader on Monday Night Football. New customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. And the reason I love using FanDuel so much is because of its versatility. It fits how I like to bet. Player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. So if you're ready to play, download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to get started today. Cardinals, because of travel issues, there will only be 4 episodes of the show this week. So we'll have the show today and 3 episodes kind of preparing for the upcoming matchup against Bowling Green. Don't worry, we're going to have everything covered for this upcoming matchup against the Falcons, but just want to give you a heads up that only 4 episodes to expect this week. But we're going to wrap up this Monday edition by discussing the the most recent weekend for the Louisville volleyball team. They are currently 7-1 after going 3-0 this weekend. They did lose that heartbreaker to Texas, but 4 matches in 5 days, and I really like what I'm seeing from the Cardinals early on this season. Don't forget, this is a team that is replacing the heart and soul of the program. Anna DeBeer, Elena Scott. I mean, the list goes on of players that you have replaced, and of course, it's always been reload, next player up, and it is that this season. But you've got more youth that you're dealing with. And, of course, you lost Danny Busboom-Kelly to Nebraska. Dan Meske's the guy. He was the guy in the huddles last year making all of the tactical adjustments, highlighting those small details on the floor. I've never been more confident that Dan Meske is the guy. I reiterated that all offseason. I reiterated that on the radio show. I'm doubling down on that take. They started out the season a sweep over Auburn and Morehead State and St. John's. They beat Illinois. And then in the Shriners Children's Showdown at the net, they struggled in that 5th set at the end. They had an 11-6 lead over Texas. Texas ended up coming back. Then the Cardinals had a 12-9 lead, and the Longhorns did what they do. They clutched up and they won. Wasn't encouraging to see the loss, but when you see things from a bird's eye view, when you see the forest amongst the trees, hey, this team went toe-to-toe with the top 2 team in the country with a ton of youth leading the way. A group of youth that's only going to get better as the season goes on. And how did they respond? Well, with a 3-1 victory against a ranked Creighton team in Omaha. Oh, by the way, the Blue Jays hadn't lost a home match in 33 games. So to be able to go into a sold-out arena and win that match was huge. Peyton Peterson was incredible on Friday night. 3-1 victory over Northern Iowa on Saturday. Northern Iowa, if you remember, the postseason last year, they almost defeated the Cardinals. It got pretty interesting. Peyton Peterson's mom's team almost defeated the Cardinals last year. And then they struggled with Rice early on Saturday, but they ended up bouncing back, clutched up in that second set, and got the W. So, I mean, you're watching this team continue to grow. Peyton Peterson leads the way. Chloe Chacoin, the Purdue transfer. You got Kara Cressy in the middle. Calissa Blackshear, true freshman, on the outside. I mean, she's averaging almost 3 kills per set. You've got Hannah Sherman in the middle too. You got Nayelis Cabello leading the way as the setter. Just overall, Camden Schran as that libero defensive specialist. This team is going to continue to get better and better and better. Like, I do not have any concerns that they're going to be incredible in postseason play. Like, they're once again going to be a team that is extremely tough to be able to defeat. Now, here's the thing. They're still young. There will be some bumps along the road. They do have a tough schedule. You know, they play the toughest teams. They have Kentucky this upcoming Thursday. And then they get into conference play, you know, where you have Pittsburgh and Stanford and some other tough teams. So will they, have some struggles along the way? Probably. But do I have full confidence that when they get to November and December that they are going to be in the hunt for another Final Four? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Like, this was supposed to be kind of a rebuild on the fly type season. But after watching the first 8 matches of the year, I don't know why there isn't an opportunity for this team to make another deep run. Now, will they get to the Final Four? I mean, to be determined. Like, yeah, I know that we've had a history of getting there the past couple of years, but it's still a young team, and we're going to keep that in mind. But we're also not going to let that cloud our judgment that this team's got it, right? Like, this team has the overall talent. And they've got that, that blue collar, we're not going to let a ball touch the floor. We're not going to let anyone outwork us. Like, this team is resilient. And I think it's going to continue to show. They're going to contend with Pittsburgh and Stanford for the ACC title. And they're going to contend for a probably top 4 seed, top 8 seed. So really excited from what we've seen early on from the Cardinals. Only one loss, and that was a 5-set heartbreaker to a very, very good veteran-led Texas team in Fort Worth, which is a stone's throw away from Austin. So it was basically a home game for the Longhorns. So you got to like what you've seen from the Cardinals this season, but they have the battle for the Bluegrass this upcoming week. Hopefully the Cards can pull it off, but that is going to wrap up this Monday edition of the show. Everyone have a great day, great start to your week. We'll see you right back here. Coming up soon, go Cards.